Hey guys, this is Rick from DFSOnDemand.com, and this is the long-awaited video on how to make Major League Baseball projections. This is going to be a long video, so let's get a couple of housekeeping items out of the way first. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these projections that you're looking at right now for both hitters and pitchers completely from scratch. So we will start with where to pull data in from, how to manipulate that data into something usable until you finally pump out projections for each one of these players. If you have watched any of my other videos before, specifically how to make NBA projections, and you had trouble with those, you're going to find that you're probably going to have trouble with these. The Major League Baseball projections are much more advanced. There's a lot more moving parts. It's just a more complex sheet in general. So if you had trouble making the NBA ones, I think you might have trouble here with Major League Baseball. You don't need to have a ton of Excel knowledge. And again, I'm using Google Sheets here, which is really just the online version of Microsoft Excel. Knowing some things is going to be very helpful. I use a lot of VLOOKUPs, and I use a lot of indexes, maybe if errors, stuff like that. We're going to import some HTML, but if you follow along, you should be able to accomplish this, but it might take some time. Okay, so what are we looking at here? These are the final product of the projections, and you're looking at the hitters right now, and what you'll see is there's a lot of information here. And we'll just kind of go column by column. A lot of them are self-explanatory. 2016 is how many DraftKings points per game this player averages for the season. Last 7 is that same number, but over the course of the last 7 days. Salary is obviously self-explanatory. 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times. This is the number of fantasy points that player needs to reach to achieve those value numbers. So Paul Goldschmidt needs to reach 11 fantasy points to achieve 2 times value. So a little bit of a handy metric there. Obviously, what team and the opponent that he's going to be going up against tonight, as well as the pitcher that he's facing. This is how the pitcher impacts the hitter. I call that pitch weight. This is the ballpark that the game's being played in and how the ballpark affects the hitter. And then we'll come up with projected points, projected value based on salary. And then these columns here are pretty interesting. This is how often a player scores 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times value. So this is really handy when looking for cash games or GPPs and trying to identify certain players. In cash games, you want safer players. So you want guys that are going to score 2 times or maybe 3 times at a much higher rate. You'll see that there are some players who often score 4 times more, like Anthony Rizzo is a very high upside player. He does not score 2 times as much as Justin Bour does, but he scores, more. He scores 4 times his salary more often than guys like Paul Goldschmidt. So that's usually a pretty good thing to know. Okay. Before we even get going into this, what you need to realize is that we are doing everything based on fantasy points per game. So when I say everything, I mean we are taking the player's fantasy points per game, how many fantasy points per game the pitcher will impact that by, and then how many fantasy points per game the ballpark will impact that by. When we normalize everything on one metric, which in this case we're using fantasy points per game, it makes it much easier to try to pump out a projection and actual points that player could score for this evening. A couple of quick caveats here. Baseball is the most volatile sport in probably all of daily fantasy. 15% of the time last year, Mike Trout scored exactly 0 fantasy points. Mike Trout is the best player in baseball. Across the entire league, that average goes up to about 20 or 25%. Your player is going to take a 0. So why I'm telling you this is because if anyone can tell you with exact certainty that they're projecting correctly every single night, they're absolutely wrong. I don't actually think Paul Goldschmidt is going to score 18 fantasy points exactly tonight, but looking at how many he usually scores and knowing that he's in a good matchup and in a good ballpark, that's really what we're trying to identify, and that is the baseline for these projections. there's a million things you can do in baseball. There are statistics for days, there are splits, there are trends. You can do whatever you want. These are really good baseline projections that are just going to tell you how the player is performing right now. Is he in a good matchup, and is he playing in a good ballpark? That is like the main three categories for these projections. If you want to use these and add in splits or add in, some advanced metric numbers or whatever you want, feel free to do so. But this is really just a nice baseline place to start. And then finally, if at any time you are overwhelmed with these projections, if you feel like you can't do it anymore, I do sell this exact projection spreadsheet. I will make a copy for you, and I will send it to your Gmail account or your Google account. I charge $50 for them. I think, for me, it probably took 20 hours to build this from scratch. If you're following along, it might take you a couple hours. It might just be worth your time to pay and have me send it to you. And then also use this as a resource. So feel free to ask a question down below. I'll do my best to try to answer any questions or any problems that you have, just like we did for the NBA spreadsheet. Okay, so without further ado, let's hop right into this. All right, so as you can see, I have a blank Google Docs spreadsheet here. Just for the sake of time, what you'll see me do is I'll flip back and forth to the sheet that I have finished, just to maybe copy and paste some stuff, just so it saves time on the video. And then if at any point if you need to pause and get what I'm typing in, please feel free to do so. So let's just get started here. I'm going to go back to the original sheet, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste these headers over. So that's pretty simple. Just have a place to start. Bring these in. We'll call this sheet hitters, and we'll duplicate it, and we'll call the next one pitchers, because they do have, actually they don't have the same, actually I think they do have the same exact number of, yeah, there we go. Okay, so there we have our headers for both of the sheets. So we will begin to start filling out all of these sections. So this will be the final product where your magic happens. I like to label them as green just so that they're easy to find, because by the end of this, you're going to have quite a few tabs down here at the bottom. All right, next we need to actually start getting some salaries. And what we'll do is you'll just go and get DraftKings salaries each day and copy and paste that information onto this tab. So if you don't know how to export the salary information from DraftKings, you just go to whatever slate that you want to play. This is an all-day slate. Realize that you're only going to get projections for people that you export here. So if you only export the early slate, that's all you're going to get in your projections. So if you want everybody, make sure you grab the all-day slate. That's one of the questions I get is like, hey, where are half the players? But it really depends on this file that you grab here. So I'll export these. You'll see that dropped down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google Drive, and I'm going to drop that file in. It's a CSV file, so this will turn into a Google Sheets document on Google Drive. I'll open this up. You can see here's all my salaries for today. So this is what you're going to do every day. You're just going to come in here and grab the salaries and copy and paste them into your projections, which is on this one, sorry. So I'll paste them there. Okay, do a little housekeeping, make it look nice while I'm here. And then all you're going to do here in column G is just come here to G2, do equals, and pull over whatever is in A2. And it's really just the position. And if you drag this down, you'll see it'll start to fill out. So this is Max Scherzer's position, Madison Bumgarner's. You can see it's changing, and it's dragging down with you. You'll see when we get out of starting pitchers that it does this for every position. There you go. So drag all the way down. I like to drag it all the way down to the bottom of the document, even past where, and I'll actually add like 400 more rows in here and drag it all the way down to the bottom, because The files that you copy and paste in here are going to be different sizes every single day. If you drag it down to the bottom, that just kind of saves you where, if I type in anything here, it's going to pull it over. See how it did that? So it saves you if tomorrow you come in and this file's longer, you don't have to drag this column G down every day. It'll already be set up for you when you do it the first time. Okay, the reason we're doing this is because we're going to have to do a VLOOKUP later, and it's much easier to do a VLOOKUP if the information that we're looking for is to the right. So we're going to look up off of Clayton Kershaw, and it's more difficult to go backwards, I should say. So I'm just going to easily put it there, and you'll see why later. I like to change this to a different color so that you remember not to erase it. So when you come in tomorrow and update this with the new salaries, you'll just clear out A through F, and this will go away. You don't want to clear out G. Those actually have formulas in there. So you'll see when I put the information back in, it populates again. Okay, next you're going to make another tab, and we're going to call this one Functions. And this is really where all the magic is happening behind the scenes. So I'll give you a look at what the finished product is going to look like. So this is the function sheet on my final product. Basically, it's just doing the work where we're getting, pieces of information in individual cells so that we can look up on it later. So you'll see in the download file, we have both the away team and the home team, but they're in the same cell. So to make this easier, we're going to try to split every piece of information up into a different cell so that we can make a call to it later. Okay, so all I'm going to do here is simply, whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to simply, in A1, I'm going to do equals, go back to the salary sheet, and do A1 here. And this is going to pull over whatever is in, no, it's not. Stand by. Okay, sorry, so I didn't have the right sheet. So do equals, go to the salary sheet, click here, just make sure it says A1. There you go. It's kind of hidden behind there. But if you make it salaries A1, press enter, it'll pull over whatever is in that cell. So you can see we're getting the information over here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through D. And we're going to drag down, and you'll see as it's doing this, it's just pulling whatever is in that cell. So if I went back to the salaries tab and changed what's in that cell, it's going to change over here. That's all we're doing is we're making a call to say, give me whatever is in that cell. That way, when you update the salary file every day, the information comes over here. So we're going to go through D, and we're just going to drag all this down. And you'll see as we do it, it's pulling across all the information. So drag that all the way down to the bottom. And you might have to add more. I'll add 500 more. I think there's usually like 12 or 1,300 players on every slate. So keep that in mind. You want to give yourself enough room. And again, okay, so there's 1,333 on this slate. If we come in here tomorrow and there's more, since we already dragged down to the bottom, you'll see that it will update for you automatically. Okay, so now that we have the information through D, we have to get a little bit creative here, and just for this purposes, I'm gonna clear these columns out. What we want to do is we want to single out the away team and the home team, so we have to break this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the split function. So we're going to do equals split. We're going to click on the cell that we want to split. Try that again. Click on the cell that we want to split. There we go. We're going to do a comma, and we're going to tell it what we want to use to split it. So in this case, we're going to split on the character, which is the @ sign. So what this is telling Excel or Google Sheets is when it finds the @ sign, that's where you split everything into the next cell. So it'll make sense when I press enter here. You'll see now we have LAD, the @ sign does not exist anymore, and then pit and everything else is in the next cell. So we're going to drag that down. So we've done a good job there. We've identified the away team. So we'll drag that all the way down to the bottom. You'll see that pop up. Just for my purposes, I'm going to call that away so we know what it is. And then now that we have that, we want to get Pitt, Milwaukee, San Fran. We want to get those those teams by themselves as well. So we're going to do the same process. We're going to put in this cell, we're going to do an equal split. And we are going to split this cell by, and it's actually a little confusing. So it's actually a space. The character here that we want to split on is a space. So if you do quote, spacebar, quote, it will split. So then you can drag that all the way down. And you'll see now we've isolated the home team and the away team. We have some information that we're not really going to use here. It's just extra info that was in those cells, but we're making progress. Okay, so now we want to go get the rest of the information that is on the salary sheet. So we're just going to do equals, whatever, go over to the salaries here and do E2 and press enter. So this will pull over average points per game. This will pull over team abbreviation, keep going, starting pitcher. Okay, so that's everything that we have on the salary sheet. So now we're just pulling over the rest of that information. Scrolling down. And again, every time you update the salaries tab, this information will update automatically. All right, so we've identified who the away team is, and we have identified who the home team is, and we have identified what team this player plays for. What we have not identified yet is who their opponent is. So we're going to have a kind of a backwards way of doing this, and just for spacing purposes, I'm just going to put an extra column in here so that I can work right next to it. So this is where we're going to find the opponent. And what we need to do is we need to say, okay, we know what team Clayton Kershaw plays for because DraftKings tells us in the file. It would be nice if DraftKings just told us who the opponent was, but they don't. So we need to say, what team does Clayton Kershaw play? Does it match either of these? If it does, give us the other one. Because clearly if it matches, if we know he plays for LAD and it matches LAD, we know that he must play for Pittsburgh. But this is not always going to be opponent and team. This is always going to be home and away. So for example, Clayton Kershaw is away tonight, yet Madison Bumgarner is at home. So we can't just match against each column. We have to do a little bit of an if statement. Okay, and here is the if statement. And you might want to pause and do this. So I'll talk you through it though. So basically what we're saying is if E2, which is LAD, matches K2, then give me G2, which is the other one. And if not, give me E2. So if that makes sense. So basically it's saying, does LAD match LAD? If not, I know that the opponent must be this cell here. But if it does, give me this cell here because I know that since they matched, he plays for that team. So basically it's just going through which one of these is not the team abbreviation to give you the opponent. So it's kind of like a weird logic, but you'll see, you can understand how it works. And you'll see that Scherzer, who plays for Washington, is going up against Milwaukee. Bumgarner and Cueto, who play for San Fran, are going up against Philadelphia. So you can see this is all accurate information because it's just looking for which is kind of the odd team out, which is always going to be the opponent because DraftKings gives us the actual team name. Okay, so drag that all the way down. Come back up. I'm just going to kind of make this look a little pretty, make sure everything's the same size, make sure everything looks uniform. And there we go. Now, if set up correctly, you never need to touch this page, this tab. So what I do is I put red on it so that you don't come in here and mess it up, and then I protect it. And you can say protect the entire sheet, and you can say I like to show a warning. So if you try to edit something in here, it will pop up with a warning and say, do you really want to do that? So let's see if it works. So if I try to change something, it'll say, hey, you're trying to edit this part of the sheet. You know, it'll tell me, you know, I can still do it, but this is just a warning sign like, hey, remember, you don't want to do this. So I'll cancel that. But that's just a nice way. So once this is set up, you'll never have to touch this as long as you did it right the first time. All right, so let's actually start populating some information on the hitters tab, which I think is a really good place to start. The way you're going to update this every day is you'll come in here, you'll come in here into the salaries, grab everybody who's on the slate, which I'm just copying and pasting. So I'm just going to copy down to the end of the list. Come back to the hitters and paste them into name, which is simple. Okay. So now, remember, we are on the hitters tab, and you'll notice I've copied everyone, which includes pitchers. Okay, we'll get rid of them later, but let's start populating some of this information. So what we want to do is we want to find Clayton Kershaw's position. So all we're going to do is we're going to do a VLOOKUP. And if you've ever done a vertical lookup, you know how this works, but basically we're just saying go find Clayton Kershaw on another sheet or on another set of data, and when you find him, return me a piece of information. So we're going to say go look for Clayton Kershaw, comma, on the, I like to do it onto the salaries tab. So when you find Clayton Kershaw, so you'll select the range. When you find Clayton Kershaw in this range, you're going to want to give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth piece of data. So they count the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is how you do this. So this is the range we want to define. We want to scroll all the way down because he could be anywhere in this list. He just happens to be number 1. So I like to take this all the way down to the bottom and say, when you find him, give me the sixth piece of information, false. And then put in $signs here just so that range doesn't move. And if you press enter, this should pull across starting pitcher for Clayton Kershaw, and it does. And you can see all it did was it went into this list, it found Clayton Kershaw, and when it found him, it gave us the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth piece of information, which was his position. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. If you've used VLOOKUPs before, you'll know. And you'll see if you drag down here, once we get past some starters, you'll see all the other positions coming into play. So second base, it's looking up the actual player, referencing the salaries tab and the salary sheet, and pulling in their position when they found it. So there you go. Some guys are eligible at multiple positions, but obviously that's fine. You want to know that. Okay, so now that we know the position, let's get rid of the pitchers because honestly they're not necessary on this tab. So if we click up here, we can do a data, sort range, sort by position. And all I'm going to do is scroll down until I find, DraftKings has relievers and starters. So I'm just going to find the relievers, click over here, drag down until I find relievers, starters. Don't accidentally delete the shortstops. Get to the end here, right click and delete these rows. So what that has done is it leaves us with just the hitters and their position. So now we're going to have to start to fill out the rest of this information. So let's do that. Let's do salary. We can do that one. So again, we're going to do a VLOOKUP. We're going to say go look up David Ortiz on the salaries tab. Look in this range. We only need here, we're only looking for salary, so we only need to go 2. And when you find him in this range, which again, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, give me number 2, which we know is salary, false. I like to put the $signs in. And there's David Ortiz, 5,600. So you can test that by coming in here and doing a Control F or Command F if you're on a Mac and do David Ortiz, and you should see that he's $5,600. So that's how you can test to make sure it's pulling across the correct information. I like to actually make it $1, get rid of the decimals, and then if you drag this down, you'll start to see it's pulling across everybody's salary just as it should. So we'll take that all the way down to the bottom. Boom, you have salary. Now that you have salary, you can do how many points he needs to achieve value. So if you're not familiar with this calculation, it's much more important in sports like basketball, but I like to look at it for baseball as well, which is, how many points a player needs to achieve value. So the way you calculate that is to divide his salary by 1,000, which would give you 5.6. which means if he were to go for 2 times his salary, it would be, this is just a regular number, 11.2. Okay, so he needs 11.2 points to reach 2 times value. And you're going to do the same thing for 3 times and 4 times. So we'll just do this, 3, change this to 4. Excel thinks these are dollars. They're not. They're just regular numbers. Okay, so those are David Ortiz. Again, drag down. You can see we're already starting to make progress on this sheet. Okay, there you go. So obviously David Ortiz needs more points to reach 4 times value than a guy like Lucas Duda does. Okay, but both would be 4 times value, but because he costs more, he needs to produce more for you. All right, so let's get team and opponent now. Well, we already did the legwork in functions on the functions tab. So again, we're going to do a VLOOKUP for David Ortiz. We're going to go look up Ortiz on here, and we're going to look for his team. So as I drag this range over, I'm going to count how many columns I go over so that I know what the VLOOKUP number is. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll actually go over one more. So 10 is the team name. I'll go all the way down to the bottom. And I know that 11 is the opponent, by the way. So you'll see why I did that in a second. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'll do 10. I'll do false. And I'll lock in this range here. And we should get Boston. Beautiful. I know David Ortiz plays for Boston. Now, the reason I did the range to column L when I only needed it to column K to get the team name is because now I can just copy and paste this into opponent and do 11 because I already set the range and that should give me his opponent. And I knew that the opponent column was number 11. So there we go. Now I've got this information. And you can see it's starting to populate. We have that. All right, so now we need to know who the home team is. Well, we've done that. So again, we're going to do a VLOOKUP off of David Ortiz and see what ballpark he's playing in under functions and who the home team is. So again, here's the range. As I scroll over, I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's the home team. Scroll down all the way to the bottom just so that I don't have to do this later. What did I say it was? 6, I think. Was it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. So we know that Texas is home. Scroll that down. So now that we have home, we can do ballpark, which we'll get to park factors later, but we have a placeholder here for the home team. Okay, so what we're going to do next here is we're going to start pulling in the fantasy numbers for David Ortiz for this season and for the last 7 days. This would be a really good stopping point if you want to take a break or make sure you've caught up, because now we're going to kind of transition into the next phase, which is we're going to pull information live from websites, and we're going to create a bunch more tabs. So this is where kind of more data is going to come into play, where we're actually going to put in some fantasy numbers. So this is a really good stopping point. So I'm probably going to take a break, just pause the recording and come back. But if you need to stop to do anything, now would be a really good time. All right, so let's actually start getting some hitters data in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get fantasy points per game for the season and for the last 7 days. And the place that we're going to get these from is Fangraphs. If you've never been on Fangraphs before, excellent site, has all the possible information you could ever want. They do a great job. That's where we're going to get our data from. So basically, if you go to leaders and then you go to batting leaders, what you're able to do is sort by 2016, sort by full season. I like to get every single player. I don't use qualified players because if they don't have enough at bats, then we're going to run into an issue where we're not going to have any data on someone. So I'd rather have a small sample size than no sample size at all. So we'll click 0. And then what you're going to want to do is do standard, so that you can get the stats that are scoreable, that are being scored on DraftKings. And then I'll see if I can if I can bring this down a little bit. What you want to do is you want to grab the URL. So you want to grab this URL right here. So I'm just going to copy that. And then I am going to, I'm sorry, we have to do one more step first. I'm sorry. Come down here to page size and change it to 50, and you'll see why we do that in a second. So again, now go up and grab that URL. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to make a couple of new tabs. So we'll make this one and we'll call it FG for Fangraphs, and we'll call it Hitters. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to import the information on that. Let me see if I can get it back to where it was. I think it was right there. We're going to import that information that is on that Fangraphs page. So we're going to do equals import HTML, which is right here. Put the URL in quotes, comma, table, which is the element that we're looking for. If I can type it, geez, oh man, comma, 0, enter. And what you'll see is this will start to load and it'll pull over everything on that page. So the formatting is a little bit wonky, but it's going to get the job done. Okay. So here's every batter, but we're only seeing the top 50 because that's what we told it to grab, right? That's what we told it on Fangraphs to grab. Well, you can see there's 738 items on 15 pages. So what we actually can do, this is kind of a little hack on their URL. So you can see if you look at this URL, you'll see it's broken down beautifully for us, but it's showing you players 1 through 50. If we change this to like 1,000, we're going to get the top 1,000 results. So change it, press enter, and you'll see this will actually load everybody. So this is a nice little trick. I don't know how many people are doing this. I think it's pretty cool. All right, so now you'll see we actually have all 738 on the same page. Beautiful, right? There it is. So we've given ourselves some room, so this will grow. Every time Fangraphs is updated, this page will update, which means every single day. And then if new batters are added, they'll come down here. So we gave ourselves 1,000 batters. We're halfway through the season. There's only 738. There's probably not going to be 1,000 this year. Maybe in September when September call-ups come up, but we can address that later. Okay, so now we have the hitters in here. Very good. You can see we have all their stats here. This is obviously the information that you earn or lose points on DraftKings. So what we need to identify now is we need to identify how many points, DraftKings points per game, each one of these batters has earned this season. So we're just going to call this DraftKings. And for the sake of time, I'm going to drop in the formula here, which is, stand by, which is this. Okay, so you can pause it. I'm just doing this to save time, but you can see that I've gone through and assigned values to singles is 3 points, doubles is 5, triples is 8, just whatever the scoring is. I've assigned it. I've added up all of those criteria and divided it by the number of games that the player has played, which is going to give us DraftKings points per game. Now, obviously, this is not a good example because Chris Hatcher has 1 at-bat in 28 games, so we'll find somebody who actually has some information here. So when we get down to like Xander Bogaerts, you can see 10.3 DraftKings points per game this season. Obviously, pretty good to know, so just drag this down all the way. Okay, so now we have that. So now we can go back to the Hitters tab and assign that. So again, we're going to do another VLOOKUP. Look for David Ortiz on the Fangraphs Hitters tab. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Drag that all the way down. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. 23, false. I put my locks in. I'll do 2 decimal points. There you see David Ortiz. All the information's coming across beautifully. Drag that all the way down. Okay, so now we have 2016. So the way I've built this projection is I would prefer to use a player's most recent stats. So it's a long season. I like to go for hitters in 7-day windows and for pitchers in 30-day windows. So what I'm going to do is if a player has stats within the last 7 days, I'm going to use those because he could be hot or cold, so to speak. But if we don't have that, we'll default to his 2016 season stats. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, so now we need to get the last 7 data. So we're going to do, it's going to be very similar to this tab. We're just going to add a new one, and I'm going to call it FG hitters last 7. And we're going to go back to Fangraphs. And instead of splitting on the full season, we're just going to drop down and do the last 7 days. Now, I'll make a note here. I do like to use the qualified stat for the last 7 days. So this means they have to have, I think it's 3.1 at-bats per every team game to, quote, qualify. The reason I'm doing this is so that we're not using such a small sample size in our projections. So if in the last 7 days someone has 2 at-bats and they hit a home run in both for whatever reason, the fantasy projection is going to be through the roof because it's going to assume that he hits a home run in every single at-bat, and that's not going to be the case. So I do like to use qualified for the last 7 days, so it shows people who have been playing every single day who are getting a good number of at-bats, as opposed to the full season. I just like to get, basically any data. Okay. So we'll do the same thing here. I want the standard tab. We're going to make it 50 again because that's how you get that little extra piece of the URL. I'm going to copy and paste the URL, which you can't see, but I showed you the last time. Oops, wrong sheet. We'll come back here. FG hitters, and we're going to do the same process. We're going to import HTML. We're going to put the URL in, quotations, comma, table in quotations, 0, and you can change it here. For qualified batters in the last 7 days, you probably don't need 1,500 or whatever we did for the last one. You can probably get away with 500. We'll see how many there actually are. Press enter, and you'll see it come up. There's actually only 200. Okay, again, make it a little neater, or as neat as can be. Okay, and we're going to do the same process. So now we need, again, DraftKings points per game for the last 7 days. So we can just grab the same formula since all the data is structured the same. Pop it in there. Format it correctly so it doesn't drive me crazy. Call this DK last 7. And drag it down. As you see, it'll start to fill out. So now we've got some guys who are a little bit hotter, scoring more DraftKings points. Again, I drag all the way down to the bottom. And then obviously we'll go back to hitters, and we will VLOOKUP off of these guys for their last 7 information. So Ortiz. Now we're going to this tab. We're looking for Ortiz in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 all the way down to the bottom. Oh, I just messed it up. Oh, no, I didn't. I clicked off of it a little too early, but it kept it for me. Okay. So now you can see David Ortiz is averaging 10.7, but in the last 7 days, he's only at 9.1. Paul Goldschmidt's a little bit hotter than his season average. Also, Edwin Encarnacion. So that's interesting to note. You can see Joey Votto playing below his season average right now. So this is all valuable information that you're certainly going to want to have access to. Drag that all the way down. And you can see there are guys here who don't have any information. So they don't have last 7 data. So they could be hurt. They could just be not playing a lot. So you'll see a lot of guys who don't have last 7. It's a little more rare to not have season information. I know he's played this year. We'll talk about that later. His name is spelled differently across different sites. That's a problem we'll take care of later. But you can see, like, I know Christian Walker is a prospect for the Orioles. He has not, I don't think he's made a major league appearance yet this year, but he's in the DraftKings sheet. So you'll see we don't have any data to work with him on. So we're not going to get a projection for those guys because we don't have either of those 2 data sets. Okay, we're going to get sidetracked here just a little bit. So while we're doing the Fangraphs data, it's probably just worth doing the pitchers data too. So we're just create a couple more tabs here. And we know we're going to have to pull over the pitchers. And we know we're going to have to pull over the pitchers for the last 30 days, which is what I like to use for those guys. So call that last 30. So while we're here, we'll just pull that information over. Again, it's going to be the same process on Fangraphs, except you're going to want to go to leaders, pitching leaders. We'll do full season. Again, I don't particularly care if they're qualified or not. If they're a starter, they've probably pitched enough where this isn't going to come into play, but I don't really want to risk it. So I'll do no minimums. We need the standard tab, and we need to change this to something else so that we can get the URL. So after that loads, go up and grab the URL out of your browser, and we will bring it back here, and we'll do the same thing. So we'll import HTML. If you're playing along at home, you've done this twice now, so feel free to fast forward or whatever you want to do. Load this information. Oh, I didn't even give myself enough. So it was actually 582. I only brought over 500. I'll change this to 1,000 just so we don't have to worry about it again. And honestly, I labeled these wrong, so this is actually going to be... I put it on the wrong tab. Okay, so we're good now. This is the full season information. And again, we just want to identify how many DraftKings points per game. So I'll grab that formula real quick. And it looks something like this. Again, you can pause and type this in. It's just the scoring structure, assigning points to each one. So innings pitched is worth 2.25 each. Strikeouts, walks, all that good stuff, divided by number of games. That's all we're doing here to get a point, DraftKings points per game. Yes, I know it is not perfect because of the way they do innings pitched on here, and Excel thinks it's 0.2, which is really 2/3 in baseball as opposed to 20%. So it's not perfect, but very, very close for our purposes. Over the course of the season, it doesn't matter, and honestly, everyone's on the same scoring system, so when we weight this later, it's not really going to matter. So drag all this down. I'm going to drag it down to the bottom. And you'll see that we now have DraftKings points per game for everybody who has pitched this season. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing for the last 30 days. Grab that split real quick. And again, I do like qualified here because sometimes you'll get a reliever with a spot start, and then maybe your sample size is only like 2 innings or something like that. So, I mean, if you're okay with, big jumps in your projections, you don't have to use qualified here, but just be aware of sample sizes when you're going through it. Okay, so same thing. We'll change this to 50 so that we get the URL. We'll grab the URL, which is what I just did. We will go to here, and again, you know exactly what you're doing at this point. Change this to, I'll change to 500. There's probably only, 100 of them, maybe. There's probably going to be less. There's 99, okay. And then same thing, we can grab the formula from here and copy and paste it here since all the data is structured the same way. DK last 30. And drag that all the way down. And then you'll be able to see, okay, John Lester, 26.91 DraftKings points in the last 30 days. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the team hitting numbers. So we haven't talked about this yet, but we'll use this information later for pitchers. While we're doing all this Fangraph stuff, let's just grab it. That way we don't have to come back later. I'll make another tab here and just call it Fangraphs Team Hitting. So what we'll use this for later is we'll use it to identify good matchups for pitchers. Again, while we're on Fangraph's site, let's just grab it. So go team batting stats 2016. So we're going to use it to identify maybe teams that are struggling at the moment or whether a pitcher's in a good matchup. You can use the full season stats. I would just prefer the last 14 or 30 days. Just kind of gives you, again, baseball season's a long season. A lot of things can happen. I prefer to kind of break it down into 30-day chunks where you can say, okay, he has had a good matchup where this team's been struggling for 30 days or they're below average for 30 days. So it's up to you. I'm going to go with 30. Again, standard. And then you don't need to make it 50 because there's only 30 teams, so you can just grab the URL here, which is what I'll do. I keep clicking the wrong tab. Okay, and then we're going to go back to here and import this just like we did the others. Excuse me. Okay. Now, just like the hitters, we need to get these teams down onto a points per game basis. And you'll see why later, but just trust me here. So I'm going to go back and grab that formula for DraftKings hitters, and I'm going to bring it into the team hitting tab. We'll paste it in, and you'll see, just double check, make sure everything is still lined up. It's actually not here, so stand by real quick. Okay, the team page is structured just a little bit differently, so this is actually the formula that you're going to want. And you'll see what it is. It's the same DraftKings formula, but then we're dividing by games. And you probably are thinking, well, we did 30 days. Yes, but this is per player. So 30 days times 9 players is 270. They don't always equal 270, depending on how many players get into the game. But what we're breaking this down for is in the last 30 days, the average Royals player scored 6.67 DraftKings points. Okay, so that's what that calculation is going to end up saying. And the reason we're going to do that is because when we compare that against the league average, we're going to know the good teams and the bad teams when it comes to fantasy points so that we can weight our projections accordingly. So I'll drag this down. Here's all the numbers. And then we will do, I like to do it just kind of, you can do it anywhere you want. I like to do it here. Just get an average. So take an average of all these teams, which is 6.2. So the average player across all teams in the last 30 days is averaging 6.2 DraftKings points per game. So you can see Phillies players significantly worse. Blue Jays players significantly better. So that'll come into play later, but you've accomplished your goal of getting that data in here. I like to mark these with orange. It just says to me that, kind of live data is coming in. You don't really need to touch these on a daily basis because the data is flowing in from Fangraphs, but you might want to check them every now and then. So I kind of just put orange on there, which reminds me of that. Okay, again, we are at another good stopping point here. We're really going to have to do some heavy lifting here in a second where we're going to have to start weighting these things. We're going to have to get the park factors. We're going to have to do pitchers, all that good stuff. If you're looking for a place to break, this is probably it. We've just accomplished getting the data from Fangraphs. So I'll probably take a break here in a second, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, welcome back, guys. We're going to continue with the spreadsheet here for Major League Baseball. Just a couple of housekeeping items here. You might be able to hear it. I'm a little bit under the weather, so if my voice sounds a little sick, I do apologize, but let's try to power through this and see if we can get some more of this spreadsheet done. Also, you might notice I tried to increase the volume a little bit. I'll try to actually level that all out before I post this, but it might be a little bit louder, so hopefully it might be a little easier to hear. Okay, so when we last left off, we have gotten all this information in about the hitters. We are pulling across our data from Fangraphs. There's just a few more things we need to grab, and it's going to be the probable pitchers and the park factors. So obviously for probable pitchers, when DraftKings gives you the salary sheet, it gives you every player or every pitcher, whether he's pitching that night or not. So these guys are all on every single slate on DraftKings. We need a way to identify who is actually starting tonight so that we can put those into our projections. So the way we're going to do that is we are again going to rely on Fangraphs. They have something on, and I'll go to their homepage here so you can see exactly where to get this. They have something on their homepage called the Probables Leaderboard. It gives you the statistics for the people who are the probable to start that specific evening. Now, there is a caveat about this. They're not always 100% correct. They're very good. They're very, very good. But if you come in here and look for information a day early, or maybe the probables haven't been decided yet, this might not match up. So you do need to be a little bit careful. I would say it's 98% correct. All right, and then for whatever reason, it always defaults to 2015. It's like they haven't updated it yet this year, which, I mean, we're in June, so I'm not sure why that hasn't been updated, but make sure you're getting 2016 information. And then you can also do other splits. I mean, you can come in here and get last 30 days so that you're getting a more accurate representation of how the pitcher has been pitching recently. And then make sure you're on the standard tab. And then finally, once you've done that, this is kind of the information, the information that we're going to export here. Again, make sure you take it to 50. And then I'm going to grab the URL, and I want to show you this. So I'll paste the URL into a Word document or a text document here. And what you can see, this is it. What you'll notice is, so you could import this into your Google Docs sheet, but what you'll have to do every day is you'll have to change the date. So you can see this is obviously June 25th, 2016 is the date of these probable pitchers. Well, we actually want to, the spreadsheet that we're building is using June 24th information. So all you really have to do is change that every single day. Okay, so let's now take this and import it into our Google document. So I'll make a new tab and we'll call it probables. And we'll do the same thing that we've been doing, which is import HTML. Okay, and we'll see this information come across here. Let me see if I can actually, there we go. Okay, so here are the probable pitchers for, and you can see it if I open it up, for June 24th. So really every day for the next day, you'd come in here and you'd change this to a 5, press enter, and now this would be June 25th's probable pitcher. So fairly easy update there. So make it the 24th. Okay. And now we've got to start breaking this information down again on a fantasy point per game basis, which is what we are using as our normalizer so that everything is on the same playing field. Okay, now you have to remember, this is what we're going to use to determine whether a batter is in a good matchup, not necessarily a pitcher. So what we want to find out is how many DraftKings points per game this pitcher gives up to opposing hitters. Okay, so that formula looks like, these should all be 3s. Nope, sorry. Let's try that again. These are 2s, but we're in the wrong column, or in the wrong row. So these should be 3s. Okay. Press enter. Yeah, because Romine hasn't started a game yet this year, so that's a bad example. So here we go. Okay. All right. So what this is saying is Carlos Martinez, on average in the last 30 days, is giving up 17.6 DraftKings points to opposing hitters. Okay, now that's interesting to know because what we're going to do is we're going to compare that to the league average and determine whether it's a plus or minus matchup for the team, because we're using this information to determine whether the team or the player has a good matchup, not necessarily the pitcher. So keep that in mind. So if I drag this down all the way, and I'll just go a little bit too far, you'll see the numbers come up here. Okay. We're going to have to add in a couple extra columns here, so just insert some more to the right. And then what I'm going to paste over here, you're just going to have to kind of take my word for it. So what I've pasted in, and you should copy these numbers in, this is on average what every starting pitcher in the league gave up over the course of the last about season and a half. So I have all the game excuse me. So I have all the game logs from this season, last season, and then I'm, taking them back even further. And these numbers are what the average pitcher gives up per start: 5.8 hits, 1.8 walks, 2.8 runs, etc., etc. And it comes out to be that the average pitcher gives up 32.2 DraftKings points to opposing lineups per game. So what we will do is we will take what number these pitchers are actually giving up and compare it to the league average to determine whether they're doing better or worse. So the very simple way we're going to do that is we're just going to do equals this cell, which is how many DraftKings points per game they're giving up, divided by AG4, which is the average. We will lock that down so that doesn't move, and we'll drag down, and you'll see these numbers start to come in. So what you need to realize here is this, excuse me, one would be an average. Okay, one would be that the pitcher is giving up exactly the average DraftKings points as the league average. So 0.55 is 55% of that. So Carlos Martinez has been really, really good. And that's going to affect your hitters' projections quite a bit. Someone like Giovanni Gallardo has been very close to the average, only 2% off. Matt Moore gives up 5% less. And again, since this is all a smaller sample size of the last 30 days, these projections are going to have a much larger range of outcomes. If you want them to have a smaller range of outcomes, if you don't think the pitching matchup is as important, you can use the full season information. These will be a lot closer to one or to what the average is. And this is what I call the pitch weight. So let's mark that accordingly. I like to do it out to a third decimal point. That's just me. You can do whatever you want. But that is the information that will come over, and we will put it here in column L. Okay. So now things are going to get a little more complex here. We need to determine what pitcher is facing what hitter that night. So normally we would just use the opponent, and we would do a VLOOKUP off of this, and we would off of Texas, and we would come into the probables, and we would look for Texas, and we would find it. We would find the pitcher that is there accordingly. Now the problem with this is when we pull it over from Fangraphs, it doesn't use the city or the abbreviation like TEX for Texas. It uses the team's nickname. So what we're going to do is on another sheet, we are going to put all these lists together that we can reference, and we can say, look for either Texas or look for the Rangers. So it tends to be a little bit more advanced. If you're doing index matching, we'll do if errors, we'll do all that stuff. I'm going to give you the formulas. So if you're just following along and pausing and typing them in, you'll get the same result. So we'll roll through it pretty quickly. But this is the part that probably took me the longest. It took me hours and hours to go through and make sure all the if errors were correct, make sure that when DET for Detroit came up, we could also match on the Tigers. So this was quite comprehensive. I'm going to give it to you all right now. So I like to make another sheet right next to functions and call it functions 2. And you'll see if I go back to the completed sheet, the functions 2 looks like this. So, and you can see why we're doing it if you can get a visualization here. So, for example, DraftKings uses these abbreviations for teams, while like Fangraphs and other sites use different abbreviations. So you can see that okay, San Fran on DraftKings is SF, and then on other sites it's SFG. Same thing for Tampa Bay. On Baseball Reference, it's TBR. So that's good to know. And then here's the differences between Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. So you can see that I have those in there. And then here's a difficult one. So I put everything in here where you'll see that on DraftKings they use a player's what they call their proper name, which includes accent marks, which Fangraphs does not. So if they don't match up, our VLOOKUPs will break. So I've made a list of all the players that I know are affected by this, and then we can reference this sheet later. And then finally, I make this sheet, which is the abbreviations, the team name, and then the abbreviations again, because we're going to use this as kind of like an index table um, to match on either one of those items. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste these in, but what I will do is I'll put them on screen so that you can see, and what I'll do is I'll actually just grab the whole thing so that you can see what they actually are and you can type them out. Maybe, as they come over here. Here we go. Okay. So just real quick, you can pause at any time. We'll go down column A, B here. This is what you should have in there. Okay. Again, feel free to pause. Here's what you should have in D and E. Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. This is more comprehensive. So this is anybody with a... And you know what? I'll provide these lists somewhere for you. I'll send you. I'll put these in a link somewhere so that you can copy and paste these in. It just doesn't make sense for you to have to type in all these names, especially with the accent marks. But I'll get these names to you somehow. I'll figure it out. Check the description of this video. I'll figure out a way to get you these. And then here are the abbreviations, team name, and abbreviation again. Okay. So there you go. There's all that information in the proper columns. Now, when I give you the actual formulas, this will make a lot of sense. So I know this is kind of tough to explain, but again, if we were to explain this, it would take, it would probably be like 10 hours worth of trying to walk through this whole thing. Okay, so let's go back to the hitters tab, and what we'll do is we'll get the pitchers' names in here. All right, so the next few steps are actually kind of confusing. So what I'm going to do in K here is I'm going to paste in what your formula should be. And this is an index match. And what we're asking this to do is we are asking this cell to go and look for what is in FG probables, so who the probable pitcher is today, match that up with the team name or the abbreviation that is in J2, Texas, reference what we have on functions 2, which would be TEX and Rangers, and then return the second portion of that, which is Rangers, and then go back to the probable sheet and find the pitcher who is associated with the Rangers. Yes, that's very confusing. Listen to that a couple times. So we're taking the abbreviation from one sheet. We're referencing what that abbreviation means. So TEX means Rangers. Then we're going back to the probable sheet and we're finding which pitcher is associated with the Rangers. And when that all comes out, it's Nick Martinez. Now, take note. I renamed my sheet FG Probables. If you still have this tab called Probables, this exact formula will not work for you. So make sure you change it to FG space Probables. Okay. So we'll just match this up here so it doesn't drive me crazy, but we'll get the formatting correct. And then what you'll notice is when we start dragging down, this is going to start putting in all of the pitchers' names that they're facing today. But what you'll notice is that we're going to get a couple of errors. And the reason that we're getting a couple of errors is this right here. Just as we mentioned, San Diego, the abbreviation SD is not the universal abbreviation. Some sites are using SDP. So we need to update this column and this column with a little bit of, it's called if error formulas, so that it will pull over whichever one. So again, this is going to be very confusing. If you're following along, here are the formulas that you need to put in I and J. So previously, here's what we had in column J, right? This is what we did. We did a VLOOKUP, and we found Paul Goldschmidt's opponent is Colorado. That's great. Edwin Encarnacion's is CWS. Unfortunately, not everyone uses the same abbreviation for the White Sox. So what we're saying is by using this formula, we are saying look for this specific abbreviation. But if there's an error, go back and look for another abbreviation. So this is what we set up in functions. So what you'll see here is actually pretty slick. So what we're saying, I'll try my best to explain this. This took me a long time to kind of wrap my head around too. What we're saying is basically if there's an error here, it's because we're referencing the wrong team abbreviation. So if there's an error here, this cell is not correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this cell, J4. Okay? So that's all this says. Again, as long as your sheets are named exactly the way mine are, functions 2 with no space, FG probables, you will be able to plug this exact formula in and get it to work. Okay? Same goes for the team name. Here's the formula for the team name. Okay? If you're using the same exact things I am, this is all going to work. So what you'll see is if I drag this down, watch this cell and this cell. When I drag this down, the Chicago White Sox abbreviation should change and the pitcher should populate. And it does. And you see, because what it said was this cell was getting an error, so we knew this abbreviation was wrong. So it referenced our table on the functions tab and found a secondary abbreviation. And that secondary abbreviation worked, which brought us back to Carlos Rodon. Okay, I know it's very confusing, but you'll only have to set this up once and you'll get it to work. There we go. Again, Colin Ray. I don't know if there's going to be any more here as we drag this down. You'll see, yeah, Tampa Bay. So what we'll do is we'll drag these formulas all the way down to the bottom. And for the most part, it's not going to change anything. It's just going to change a few abbreviations if there's an error later. So no big deal there. We'll drag this all the way down. And now we have every pitcher who is starting today according to the Fangraphs probable pitchers. Boom. All right, that's excellent. That's a huge step. That is one of the most complex things that we're going to do. That might be, between that and the park factors, that is definitely the most complex part that we're going to do. It's getting the abbreviations right and having a table set up so that you can work on all abbreviations. Once that is set up, the rest of it is pretty easy. So for example, let's go get the pitcher's pitch weight. All we're going to do here is we're going to do a VLOOKUP. Again, we can do a VLOOKUP. Now we have the pitcher's name. So we're going to go to Nick Martinez, do a VLOOKUP off of, we want to get their pitch weight, which is on the probables tab. We're going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. The pitch weight is in 26. I'll take a couple extra just to be safe. Lock these in here. And you'll see already Nick Martinez's pitch weight is 1.2. He gives up 1.2 times the DraftKings fantasy points per game than the league average. And when we start to drag this down, you'll see the rest of the league start to fill itself in. Okay, boom, we're making progress now. So we are basically done 2/3 of our hitters sheet, if not more. Remember, these projections really account for 3 things: how well a player is playing at the moment, what kind of matchup they're in against the pitcher, and then how good the ballpark is. So we have right here how well they're performing recently or this season. We have the pitch weight. Now all we have to do is get the ballpark. Once we have those 3 pieces of information, we can actually project points and value, and then we'll do the exact same thing for the pitchers. Again, it's been 20 more minutes. Here's another good place to take a stopping point. When we come back, we will do the ballpark factors. We'll plug that number in here, and then we'll be able to actually make the projections. So stay tuned. I'm just going to pause, and we will come back and do the park. All right, so let's do the park factors here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make another tab, call it parks probably. I'll let you know if we have to change that later. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and get ESPN's park factors from last season. So if you just Google ESPN park factors, you'll get to something like this. You can use this season's information. I like to use last year's. Honestly, I mean, it is a little dependent on the a little bit dependent on the team. But obviously, like Coors is always going to be a top one. Progressive Field's always going to be a top one. It's to me, I just prefer to have more information, which is a full season's worth of data. So I use 2015, and then probably in the 2017 season, I'll use 2016 park factors. So to me, it's kind of it's kind of your call. I don't think there's a need to update this all the time now that we're at least halfway through the season, or in this case, 2015 is not going to be updating. So I'm simply just going to come in here and copy and paste it. You don't need to import HTML or anything. And then I'm going to just put it in A1. And what you'll see is, if we just format this a little bit. I like to make sure everything is looking good. Okay, so let's just talk about what this means really quick. When it says Coors Field 1.4 in runs. Well, what that is 1.4 times the league average is the number of runs that are scored on Coors Field. So like Nationals Park, a 1, that's dead on the average. Not more, not less. That's the league average right there. So that's what these numbers mean. If it's below 1, like AT&T Park, it's 84% of the league average, 84.5% of the league average. So that is what these numbers are referring to. Now, before we get any further, let's talk about some of these abbreviations here, because abbreviations are obviously a big part of this whole thing. The way we have determined how we're going to determine the park is we are going to determine who the home team is, and that will give us the park. So we need to be able to search on the abbreviation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just insert a column to the left here, and I'm going to type in each one of these abbreviations for each one of these teams. So to save time, I'm actually just going to copy and paste them in. Okay, and here they are. So as you can see, COL for Colorado, all the way down. So we're just using KC for Kansas City. Obviously, we have it set up where, since we're using the index table, our hitters tab should be able to determine what abbreviation is for what team, whether it's KC or KCR. So we should be good there. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we need to take this information of knowing that, for example, Coors Field gives up 1.4 times the runs than the league average. We need to take that information and in some way convert it to DraftKings points, because that is the whole process we've been doing so far. We've been doing everything on DraftKings points. So I'm just going to recreate these headers here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just do a little formula to determine how many more DraftKings points per game a player will score from runs than the league average if they're playing at a specific ballpark like Coors Field. So let me plug the formula in, and then we'll kind of discuss that a little further. All right, so here's the formula. And what we're doing is we are taking 1.4, which is the number of runs here, or the above league average. We're subtracting 1. So basically what we're saying is Coors Field gives up 43% more runs than the league average. So we got rid of the 1. And then we're multiplying it by 2. And what that is the value of a run in DraftKings scoring. So what we've come out with is 0.872. So a player per game will earn 0.872 more fantasy points per run scored if they play at Coors Field. That is the logic here. That's a little confusing. So again, a player who's playing at Coors Field will score 0.872 more DraftKings points per game than the league average ballpark. That's how many fantasy points he'll get for runs. We do that for homers, hits, doubles, triples. I actually removed walks. Walks to me are not a something that is determined by the park. There's no effect or factor of a ballpark in my opinion. If you have an argument against that, you can use it or let's talk about it, but I don't agree. A couple of caveats here. Here's the formula for home runs, and we did the same thing. Where here we go. I said we subtracted by 1, so 21% more home runs are hit at Coors Field than the league average. We took 10, which is the value of a home run on DraftKings. But then we had to add another layer into this. And this is this number right here. And this is the decimal version of the percentage 11.6%, 1.116. Basically, 11.6% of all hits are home runs. So that is what we're doing here. We did it for singles too, which 66% of all hits are singles, 19.5% of all hits are doubles, and then 2% of all hits are triples. If we didn't do that, if we didn't specify what percentage of hits there are, all of these numbers here would be double counted. They'd be counted as hits, doubles, triples, and home runs. So you have to break down what percentage of those hits are actually homers. It would skew the whole thing if you didn't do it. So again, here are the formulas. That's hits, doubles, and triples with the DraftKings points in here. And again, if you didn't do that, it would really just kind of mess this whole thing up, where it would assume that like guys would be getting 20-point boosts because every time they get a hit, this would think it would be counting it as a home run, a double, and a triple. It would just kind of skew the whole thing. So now that we have this information, we can determine how many fantasy points per game a player gets as a boost. And real quick, by the way, where I got these numbers, 11.6, 66.5, 19.5, and 20 and 0.022, those are again from the game log. So that's using actual information over the course of the last year and a half that I have. That's actually what has happened in Major League Baseball over the course of the last season and a half. All right, so now let's actually sum these up here. So if we just do a sum of these, basically what this number is saying is a player who's playing at Coors Field is going to receive a 2.1 DraftKings points per game boost over the league average than any other player, or than the league average player. Okay, so 2.1 DraftKings points does not sound like a lot, but when you realize that the league average is 5.9 DraftKings points per game across all players, all matchups, all parks, that is a sizable increase. So let's actually grab that average number real quick. And I'm actually just going to drop it in over here kind of out of the way. You should never delete this. This is the actual average that players have scored over the course of, again, the last year and a half across all games everywhere, so 5.9. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out the boost, which would be, let's get the formatting right before that drives me crazy. So what we're going to figure out is if we do this number divided by this number, you'll see that Coors Field gives a 35% boost to DraftKings points per game than the league average. Okay? Does that make sense? And then finally, what we're going to do is we're simply just going to add a 1 to this number. And the reason that we're going to do that is because when we multiply by it later, if we use 35%, it will actually decrease a player's production at Coors Field. If we do 1.3, when we multiply by 1.3, it will increase the fantasy production for a player at Coors Field. So that's just why we're doing that. We're just adding a 1 there. And I guess really you could do it in this one too. Honestly, I just like to do all my steps here. You could add a 1 to the end of this formula and have it all in here. It doesn't matter. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to drag all of this down across all of the stadiums. And of course, there is an error here. Oh, sorry. I got to lock in this number. So lock that in. And we should see, yeah, there we go. Okay. Everything else come out. So as you can see, a stadium that would be very close to average. Nationals Park is pretty close to average, 995. That's probably the closest. Target Field also 1.013. That's pretty close. So those are like your average ballparks. Coors Field, Progressive. Those are giving players the biggest boost. Obviously AT&T. That's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. Same with Safeco. Those are things you know. Now we've quantified it into DraftKings points per game. Okay, so that's what we've done right here. Now that we have that done, let's go back and add that into our hitters column. So again, we're just going to do a very simple VLOOKUP. We're going to look up off of Texas, which is the home park. Since we know who the home team is, let's just tell it what park we're playing in. So we'll do a VLOOKUP for Texas. In this range, this is why we put the abbreviations in here, so we can grab the range from here. We're going to go across. I think I counted 18. We'll grab the range here, do 18, false. I'm going to lock down the entire column, or the entire range here. Press enter, and we get 1.111. That is the boost that hitters are getting at Texas's stadium, which is the ballpark in Arlington. To double check this, just go to the Parks tab, look for Texas, and you'll see their boost is 1.111. So we absolutely did that right. That is correct. So we can drag this down, and you'll notice same issue we had before. It's not recognizing SFG. So let's drop in another if error formula, which looks like this. So in N2, which is your park, you'll want to drop this in. And basically, this is the formula that we had before. This is the VLOOKUP that we had before. We're saying if that doesn't work, go to the Functions tab and find the other abbreviation for Texas, which is a bad example. In this case, I'll drag it down. It's saying go to the Functions tab, find another abbreviation for SF, which we've already listed out is SFG. Go back to the Parks tab, find that example, and then give me that number if you can find SFG. So it's just a little bit of a safety net. You'll see that it obviously worked. So we'll drag that down the whole way. Again, pause if you need that formula, but there you go. There is your park factors. You can go out to 3 decimal points, whatever you want. Okay? Now, this is kind of where the magic happens. We have identified all 3 of the factors that we want to use in these projections, which is recent performance, whether they have a good pitching matchup, and how good the ballpark is. So now, let's put it all together and get a fantasy points projection. And that formula looks like this. Okay? So let's talk this out. I'm going to put this in here. This is David Ortiz projected for 7.9 fantasy points tonight. Now, what this is doing is the way that I have this set up is that it's looking for the player's last 7 information first. So what this is doing is it is averaging the pitching weight and the ballpark. Okay, it's putting those 2 items together. And it is multiplying that by the fantasy points per game that David Ortiz has earned in the last 7 days. I'd prefer to use recent history as opposed to season history. If you prefer to use just the season data, get rid of this. You don't need it. But what this if error is in here for is it's saying if you can't find anything in D2, if that gives you an error, use C2. And C2 is their season information. So as long as you have one of these 2 pieces of information, you're going to get a projection out of this. If you don't have either, you will not get a projection for that player. So just keep that in mind. Again, if you just want to use last 7 or if you just want to use 2016, feel free. I'm using a little bit of a safety net here. Okay, bring this in a little bit. And then projected value. So this is just a nice little one. So this says if he scores 7.9 fantasy points tonight, what kind of value is that going to be? So all you're going to do is you're going to take his salary, divide by 1,000, and then divide the whole thing by what his projected value or what his projected points would be. And for some reason it thinks it's a number. It's not a number. It would be 1.41. So if he scores 7.9 fantasy points tonight, it would be 1.4 times his value. So that's what that number is right there. And as we start to drag down, you'll see this information begin to populate. Will Myers highly projected tonight, and you can see why. He's swinging the bat very well, 15 points per game over his last 7. He has an excellent matchup with Cody Reed, and he's in an above-average ballpark, so it should make sense that his average or that his projected points tonight is very high. Now here's an example where, and we can fix this too, you're getting 0 projection because Andrew Romine has not made a start this year, so we don't have anything to work his pitch weight off of. I'll show you a way to fix that here in a second. So let's drag all the way down. And there you go. You have made fantasy baseball projections. You'll notice that guys like this, Byung-Ho Park, I don't have season or last 7 data on him, so he is not getting a projection. Again, he's a guy that we can add to that functions list because I do know that he has information this year. So he would go in your functions 2 sheet and he would just be added to the list. We'll talk about that at the end. Okay, so how do we fix the fact that Andrew Romine or anybody for the Indians is not getting a projection right now? Since this is technically an error, this is an error function, an error message, we're going to do an if error formula again here. And we're going to say if we don't have any pitch weight, we're going to default it to the average, which is 1. So you may agree or disagree with that, but we don't have any information on Andrew Romine. As opposed to just not getting any projections for the Indians, which isn't really fair, what we'll do is we'll just assign an average pitch weight to Romine, and he will be a 1 here, and then Cleveland, the rest of the Cleveland projections will just be how good the ballpark is and how well the player's swinging at the time. I think that's a really fair way to do it. Okay, so here's that formula. All we did is we put a VLOOKUP in the if error, and we said if you get an error looking for Andrew Romine from our probables, so real quick, so if you look up here, this is the one I just did. This is the one you currently had in there. So all we did was nest the VLOOKUP inside an if error. And we said if you can't find anything, return a 1. And that is exactly what it's doing. And you'll see now Carlos Santana does have a projection because it's just assuming league average everything for Andrew Romine. So we will just make sure that goes across the entire column here. So you'll see when we get to another guy, here's Yan Gomes. So when we go down over Yan Gomes, you'll see that information changes because Romine is now assigned a 1. But you'll see that guys that were already fine, they're not being changed. Yeah, okay, it's rounding differently, but it's still the same number. 776 will go to 78. Yeah, there you go. So we'll just drag that down. So it's just fixing the errors. And then if you want to pull it back out to another decimal point, you can do that. Okay, so there you go. So now you fixed all those projections. And again, like here's a guy who we have no information on. That's why you're not getting a projection from here. All right. Okay. Let's talk about these columns here. The percentage of time a player reaches 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times value. This is a little bit of a manual process, and we don't have it, although I've tried to make it as simple as possible for you. Using a player's mean and standard deviation, which are just the mathematical calculations, you can determine how often they've scored 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times their value. So I make this information available to you on dfsondemand.com. If you do not have a subscription, you will not be able to access this information. But honestly, it's $12 a month, so like 50 cents a day. It's probably worth it if you want it. There's a lot of good tools on there. It's more videos like this, all that good stuff. We're now like an hour and a half in, and I just did the first plug. So I think that's pretty good. Okay. So what you want to do is, and I'll take you to the finished projection sheet. And I have something called a player scoring calendar on DFS on demand. And what it is I've gone through and I update this daily, where you can pull across every player, every hitter, and every pitcher's mean and standard deviation. Okay? It's updated on a daily basis. Guys who have a higher standard deviation are more volatile. Guys like Jose Fernandez, who has a 10.2 standard deviation, that means his outcomes are a wider range than a guy like Steven Strasburg's, who is only 5.8. So it's just a normal bell curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this information, copy and paste it. I'm going to create a new tab called Player Calendar. And I'm going to paste it in. This is on DFSOnDemand.com. It is in the Player Scoring Calendar tool. There is a file to download every single day that gives you this exact information for DraftKings and FanDuel. You just have to copy and paste it in. That's it. Okay? So then, I like to mark it blue so I know that it's on DFS On Demand. Okay. So now, what you need to do for the hitters is you need to come in here and do, again, a VLOOKUP. You'll be sick of VLOOKUPs by the end of this. For the player, on the Player Calendar tab, and what you're going to do is you're going to grab his mean. So just do this. His mean is in column number 2, false. Lock down the rows. There's Carlos Ortiz. David Ortiz's mean. Since I did the range correctly, I can just copy and paste that in and change this to 3 and get his standard deviation. Boom. Drag down. All the way. Now you have every player's mean and standard deviation. Pretty nice, huh? Okay, so that's all your hitters. All right, there is actually a normal distribution formula in Google Docs. So let's see if I can find it. So it's normal distribution. If you follow the instructions, it will, it will ask you to pull across the X, which would be this. We want to find out how often he reaches 11.2 since we're on the 2 times value. Then it'll ask you to pull over the mean, which we have is here. Then it'll ask you to pull over the standard deviation, which we have is here. And then it'll give you an error message. Hold on one second. Oh, just add a 1. We missed a step. Add 1 for cumulative. Boom. What this says is that 0.45, which is 45% of the time, David Ortiz scores at least 2 times value. I like to make it simple because that's actually not correct. Sorry, it's actually 45% of the time he scores outside or less than 2 times. So if you do 1 minus, it's actually 54% of the time he scores above 2 times. My bad, it's a bell curve. Change it to a percentage, boom. 54.37% of the time, David Ortiz scores at least 2 times value, or will score 2 times value. Then we're going to do the same thing. So copy and paste this formula in for 3 times and 4 times. And then all you need to update is F2 to be G2, which is how many points he needs to score 3 times value. And then change it to H2 for how many times he needs to score 4 times value. Make them percentages. Spread these out. Drag it down. Okay, you have officially completed your entire hitters tab of this spreadsheet. Congratulations, you have hitting projections for Major League Baseball on DraftKings. There they are. All right, so we've done hitters. Let's do the pitchers. Luckily, since that we now have all of this information in the tabs here. There's really nothing else to do but just come in and plug it in. So again, if you want to take a quick break, now's the time to do it. I know we've gone for another 25 minutes. Take a break now. We'll come back. We'll do the pictures. We have all the information, so doing the pictures will be a lot quicker. And yeah, that's it. We're getting very close to being done here. So take a break, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, so back with the pitchers. This is just going to be a lot of VLOOKUPs again. So the way you're going to want to do this is you're going to want to go to, we don't want every single pitcher. We only want the guys who are pitching today, obviously. So we're going to go to the probables tab. What we're going to do is we are going to grab, and when I say grab, I mean copy and paste all the guys who are probable to pitch today according to Fangraphs. We're going to copy them. Go back to the pitchers tab. I like to do a paste values only. I hate, obviously if you've been watching this entire thing, you know that I'm a stickler for the formatting, so I like to get rid of the formatting. It's really your call. All right. Here are all the pitchers that are probable to pitch today. Again, let's just delete some of these rows here at the bottom so that I can drag all the way down to the bottom. Okay, there we go. And now we're just going to start doing VLOOKUPs off of everything. So VLOOKUP for Andrew Romine, and we need his position, so we'll go to the salaries tab. We'll do the whole thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll grab everybody so that I can just find Andrew Romine in this list. Again, he was a position player who made a start a few weeks back, so, or I guess it was last start or last week sometime. I don't know when he pitched, but he pitched 1 inning. So clearly, Fangraphs has him listed as a pitcher now, which is obviously wrong. We can delete him here in a second. But if you drag down, you'll see the rest of these guys are pitchers. Okay, let's just get rid of Romine. We'll fix this for Davies later. We'll talk about how to do the if errors and stuff like that. Okay, we need these guys 2016 stats. So let's do a VLOOKUP for LeBlanc off of the FG pitchers, because this is their season data, remember? So as this loads, on my computer, there we go. As this loads, we will count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 25. So this is their DraftKings points per game. 25. Formatting. Okay. So there's their DraftKings points per game. Now let's do their VLOOKUP for their last 30. Again, now that we've done all this work, we can just do a lot of VLOOKUPs and go get it. What was that? 2, 3. 25 again. I guess I should have known that. There we go. Okay, so now we've got their season and their last 7. We'll go get their salary, which is on the salaries tab, of course. You'll be the king of the VLOOKUPs when this is all over. You'll be doing VLOOKUPs in your sleep. Very handy tool for Excel or Google Docs. I do so many VLOOKUPs every day, it's insane. Okay, we've got their salaries. Then based on their salaries, we can determine, again, what it would take to reach 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times value. Whoops. Getting crazy here. That's 2 times. This is just a number. We can just copy and paste these in and change it to 3 and 4. Nope. Change the last number to 3 and 4. Make these bigger. I hope I'm not going too fast. This is, you know, we've done this once already, so just kind of flying through it here. We did this for the hitters. If you want to go back and do that, drag it all the way down. So now you have what they need for that. We'll go get their team, which I think we did. Okay, we did it off the functions tab. Okay, you know what? I'm actually thinking this is probably we probably don't need to. Well, let's do it anyway. We've gone for an hour and a half. Let's just keep going. I was gonna say I'll just put the formulas in and tell you what they are, but we might as well just do it. All right, we were looking for his team, so LeBlanc off of the functions, which is here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Seattle. Okay. Can I just drive me crazy? Okay. Opponent, again from the functions tab, another VLOOKUP. I know that that's 10, so that's 11. That's an interleague game. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll do home while we're here. That's also on the functions tab. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Park. We'll do the same thing where I'll just grab the. I'll grab this formula here from the hitters tab, which is the one we did before, which is an if error. It's referencing the functions, then it's going to the ballpark. So we're going to do the same thing for the pitchers. I'll just drop that in. It should work. Of course it doesn't. Stand by. This used to say M2. It's actually L2, which is this column. So just a little bit different there, but that should work. So that's your formula for Park. Yeah, Seattle's very pitcher friendly. Okay, these all look good. Okay. Drag those down. We can do these. So we can do, whoops, I have two standard deviations here. We can do mean and standard deviation while we're here since we have it. So just go to the player scoring calendar. And now you're just looking up off of pitchers. Mean is 2. Standard deviation is 3. Why we're getting an error is like guys like wondering when the last time I updated that file is on the copy and paste. It's updated every day on DFS on demand, but I might not have updated it on my copy and paste yet. But basically, like Wade LeBlanc doesn't have a big enough sample size yet. You see most of these guys do, but some of them are like these guys are rookies. They don't have a huge sample size yet. So as long as this is updated and they have a big enough sample size, you'll get information. Like JB Shuck's an outfielder. That's not right. That's Fangraphs again because he made one appearance at some point. Okay, so we have that, and then we can do the distribution again from same thing from the hitters. As long as F2, yeah, this is going to be right. Of course, he doesn't have one. F2. G2 for 3 times. Don't worry about the errors yet. H2 for 4 times because you'll see we don't have a mean or standard deviation. Okay, sorry. So apparently the pitchers have different columns than the hitters do. So here, if you were following along, this was T and U, which are outside the range here. You just need to change those to S and T, which are actually mean and standard deviation. So that should work now. And it does. As long as they have a mean and standard deviation, that will work. Drag that down. Make them percentages. Bring them in. Okay. So there you go. There's that. Okay, now we just need to get opponent's weight. Now, the way we're going to do that, the way we're going to get opponent's weight is over here on the team hitting tab. Remember a while ago when we pulled this over, and this is team hitting, and this is how many DraftKings points per game the average player on that team has scored. And then we found the average down here. Remember when we did that? Well, it's finally coming back into play. So what we're going to do now is determine, we're going to take this number, which is how many DraftKings points per game a Royals player has scored, divide it by the league average, lock down league average so that doesn't change, which I didn't do. Now I did. And what this is saying is Royals players score 1.05 times or 5% more than the league average player. Okay, so that makes sense. So drag that down. Obviously, teams like the Red Sox and the Orioles and the Rockies score more than teams like the Phillies, the Rays, and the Dodgers. Okay, all makes sense. But remember, what we're doing here is we're doing this for pitchers. So Royals players score 5% more. Well, you don't want to add 5% to a pitcher's projection. You actually want to subtract it. So you need to fix it and do 1 equals 1 minus whatever is in here. Whatever is in, what is that, X3, X4, X5, X6. So what this is saying is a pitcher will, in theory, score 5% less DraftKings fantasy points when they face the Royals. Okay? When they face teams like the Phillies, they're going to score 23% more. So let's pull that number over. So that's the opponent's weight. But what we need to do first is, again, of course, we need to do abbreviations. So actually, let's insert a column to the left here. And we need the abbreviations for all of these teams since we have the abbreviations on the opponent tab here. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste these in. Actually, forget that. We can't copy and paste it in because this is being pulled in from Fangraphs, and it's ranking them by average. So if one team, like here's the Rockies are in the 5 slot. If and when they pass the Rangers in batting average, they're going to go up to the 4 spot, which we can't just type it in here. We have to actually VLOOK up off of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Functions 2 tab, and we're going to add a new column. So in O, I'm going to paste in the abbreviations that I know work for Fangraphs, which are these. So if you need to pause, this is the list of abbreviations that I know works. And simply, we're just going to type in, and I know this is a little bit repetitive, but I think it's worth you actually seeing. Type in the team's nicknames because that's what we're going to have to look up off of from Fangraphs. So as I type all these in, you can go through and do the same thing. I know it's probably boring watching, but you've been watching for probably an hour and a half or probably more. So at this point, it probably doesn't matter. And we're almost done. And you guys can see my touch typing skills. Okay. All right, so now that we've done that, we can go back to the hitting tab, the team hitting tab. And what we'll want to do is we want to pull the abbreviation over. So we're going to look up for the team nickname now off of Functions 2, what we just did, which is N through O, to lock these down because they're never going to change. This range is never going to change. KC, boom, boom, boom. You can see they all match up. Yankees and Diamondbacks. Well, I know why Diamondbacks is wrong because I made it 2 words, which I thought was the way they had it. It's 1 word on Fangraphs. And Yankees, we must have spelled wrong, which we did. So note, if you spell something wrong, that's probably the error that you're getting. So go back and double check. So if we go back, you should see they'll be fixed. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now you have all that. All right, now we go back to the pitchers tab, and we do a VLOOKUP off of the opponent. Opponent, team hitting. These rows, which is then 2 false. Again, this range will never change, so you can lock that down. And there you go. We're close. Hold on. Okay, so you can see we're close here, but we did get some errors, which maybe I messed up. So maybe those should have been, let's talk this out together here. Maybe this should have been TB, and this should have been this abbreviation for the White Sox. Let's see if that fixed it. Yeah, there we go. So that was fine. Sorry, I had the wrong abbreviation. So then it's just SF and SD there, which we can do in here. And then SF. So that should fix them. Okay, and you'll see that it does. So we've got now all the pitch weights. I like to make these percentages, and you can see obviously a pitcher is going to get a boost by 22% when he faces the Phillies. When he faces the Mariners, obviously, who are a better hitting team, they lose 6%. I'm getting Zach Davies out of here. The issue he's not showing up is because his name is Zachary Davies on one database and Zach Davies on another. If you add him to your functions 2 column in here, that should fix that. But just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to get rid of him. He's annoying me. Okay, now, finally, we can do the projections here. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to favor the last 30. If we don't have last 30 information, we're going to use season data, and then we're going to weight the opponent, weight the park, and do the projected points and value. And that formula is basically identical to the one that we did for hitters. So using an if error, saying go get last 30, and then use the weight and the park, and then if that doesn't work, use the 2016 information, press enter. You now have a pitcher's projection for Wade LeBlanc this night against the Cardinals at Safeco Field. Very simply do his projected value, or what his value would be, assuming he hits it, which looks like this. Divided by would help. Always thinks it's a dollar amount. There we go, 4.21. Drag this down. Boom. Pitchers projections. So there it is. I think that's basically it. That will get you through the vast majority of this. What I will show you next is how to update these on a daily basis and how to do some conditional formatting. So if this is where you want to stop, it's all you. Go do whatever you want. Go use these for whatever purposes you see fit. I hope you appreciate it. Leave me any comments or questions if you have them on the bottom. But I will continue here, and we will go through just adding conditional formatting to make this look nice, and then how to update this on a daily basis. So it should probably only take a couple more minutes. If you made it this far, it's probably worth watching the whole thing. So take a break. I'll be back in a second. All right, we are in the home stretch now. I like to add some conditional formatting just so that it's easy to identify different things. So I want to know, basically what I'll do here is I'll highlight all of this, go to Format, Conditional Formatting, and I'll just do a color range. And basically what I want to know, and I like to use, you can use any colors you want. I like to flip these colors. So I like to use red as low and green as high. so that you can see all of these pitchers compared to each other, who has the highest season average very quickly. Again, green is good. That's the way I like to think of it. So Scherzer is the top one here. The more red it is, the more bad, I guess it is. So I like to do this for a couple of different sections here, just so it kind of looks pretty and it's easy to identify. Then I like to do salary, because then you can identify, better plays. So I like to actually flip it. So I like where red is, again, bad if they're more expensive. So if you're scrolling through here, you can see, like, if you see green, that's pretty good considering someone who has a top season average, but is also very inexpensive. So green is good. Then I like to do the same thing for opponent weight if I want to go through and just see who the best matchups are. And again, I do red is low, green is high. So I would say this is good. Jake Peavy against the Phillies is a good matchup. It's very green. Do the same thing with ballpark. Scale that out. For this purposes, again, I flip them because green is good. And actually, this is not right. This is why you check your work. So I made a mistake here. So right now I have the Rockies would actually, playing in Colorado, would give a pitcher a 1.357 boost. That is not correct. That's what it would give the hitters. We have to flip this. So my bad, guys. Real quick, just we can go back to the park factors here, and we can add in a new column, which is what I've done here, and just called it pitchers. And then all I did is I did 1 minus R2, which is the boost that it gives. So actually, we want to subtract 35% from pitchers playing at Coors Field from their fantasy output, not add it. So that is my bad. Obviously, a big difference. So what we have to do now is, after we drag that down, we just have to go back into pitchers for the park. And whoops, that was a misclick. That was a misclick. Jeez, oh man, what am I doing right now? All right, and we have to change these V lookups to be, let's see if I can just do this here. I bet you I can. Maybe not. All right, geez, sorry, I really butchered this. Okay, so it's not 1 minus R2 over here. It's 1 minus Q2. My bad. 64%. Yeah, that's right. There we go. Jeez. All right, my fault, guys. All right, yeah, now this is right. So now when we go back, we need to change this formula. So this is the one we had under parks. Just change it from A to S19 and then AS19 over here. Press enter. You'll see it's much different now. Drag that down. But much more accurate, where obviously pitchers are getting 64% of the league average fantasy points when they get to Coors Field, which means they're getting less fantasy points. So, okay, my bad on that, but we fixed it. Now back to the conditional formatting. You can see green is good for pitchers. So San Francisco, the best pitcher-friendly park. That is good. I like to do the same thing here for conditional formatting. And again, I make mistakes too, so make sure you go through and you check all this stuff. I like to do green, and then I like to do value as well. It's really your call here on what you want to do. I'm just showing you how I normally do it. And then you could do it here too, if you really wanted to. Again, you have to flip them. So this way you can go through and easily identify, like Archie Bradley might be a pretty good cash game play, because he's always, like, 60% of the time he's reaching 2 times value, as opposed to someone like Tommy Milone who never gets there. Like, if you're going to roster Tommy Milone, hopefully it would be in a GPP or never at all. But you get the idea there. And then quickly we'll just do the last one while I have you here. Okay, So that would be like the final product of the pitchers tab. You can do the same thing for the hitters. For the sake of your time, I'll just pause this real quick and come back and have it done. All right, there you go. We're back. You see I've completed the conditional formatting here. Now, the last step is to show you how to update this on a daily basis. So this should take like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. My computer runs a little slow, especially when I have the screen recorder running, but you'll see what we have to do here. So all you need to do is you need to go into DraftKings and download their salaries file. I suggest uploading it to Google Docs, which I showed you at the very beginning of this process. I do that just so that I have a history of the file, but then also I can very easily come in here and copy and paste it. So this is June 25th's all-day slate on DraftKings. It has every player. What you want to do is you want to copy and paste columns A through F. Not columns A through G, not columns A through H, columns A through F. Come in here, Control C, or Command C if you're on a Mac, so that's copy. Come into the Salaries tab. Erase A through F. Do not erase G. Do not erase H. Nothing. A through F. Erase those. And paste in your new salaries into A1. And you'll see when they start coming in, and this might take a second here just because I've got a lot of stuff running right now. What you'll see is the players will drop in, and then all of their positions will also begin to populate. Come on. Right there. And then if we go back to other tabs, there's going to be some more information. So we've updated the salaries since they change every day, and we need to update the probables since those change every day. So simply go to your probables tab, and you want to click up here. This is the cell that we actually have the formula in. And if you remember, I showed you how to do this. This is June 24th's probable. Since we're doing June 25th now, we just want to change this to a 5 and press enter and change it to any date you want. Again, the closer you are to it, the better it's going to be. And you'll see, boom, everything just populated there. Now we have June 25th. What I like to do, okay, so like I said, Fangraphs isn't always the best. It knows, when someone pitches, it puts them on here. It might not be because they're actually a pitcher. So Eric Kratz is not a pitcher. What this is doing is this is working off of, see, this is what's interesting. So this is working off of the team nickname. So unfortunately, you're going to have two Pirates in here. You're going to have Jeff Locke and Eric Kratz. Unfortunately, Eric Kratz is not the guy you want, so I would say come in here and delete Pirates, but watch what happens when I do that. It won't let me because we're importing this data, so I can't change anything. So what I would actually probably recommend you do when you see this is actually go to this page on Fangraphs and just copy and paste it in every day. It's not nearly as automated as just changing a URL, but it's probably the safer play. So this really only affects days where there's going to be inconsistencies like this. So here we go. Here's the probables. If you just grab to the left of the number sign and then come down here and highlight to the right of the last item, if you come in here and just paste this information in, so let's see what happens. This is the part we want to get rid of. If you just paste, let's see what happens here. Paste this in instead. I think you're going to get a much better result. And you'll see you do. So what you can do is you can get rid of Pirates for Kratz, get him out of there. You can get rid of JB Shuck. He's an outfielder. We know he's not actually pitching. And that just leaves you with the guys that you actually want. So you can copy and paste these guys in. So do a copy, come to the Pitchers tab, erase the pitchers that you have in there, and you'll see the data goes away. And then right-click and do a Paste Special, Paste Values Only. And what you'll notice is as soon as I press Paste, all of their information is going to begin to populate from all of the other data sources that we have. Boom. There you go. Okay. And what you need to do is you need to drag this down, and you need to highlight across here and drag all of these down so that Gio Gonzalez gets his information. And what you're looking at here is we have a couple of errors. Nate Carnes, the reason we're not finding anything on him is because Fangraphs has him as Nathan Carnes. Again, add him to your functions too. That will fix that. Matt Garza is not finding, it's not finding Washington because it should be Washington. Like that, WSN. I will make a follow-up video on how to do that. It's just an if-error statement. But right now, you have a pretty good list of all the pitchers. I like to sort by projected value. We'll get rid of the guys. Again, I'll make follow-up videos on how to update this information. But just delete those. And now you have pitcher projections for today. I like to sort by value, so boom, there you go. And you've got everybody there. So your pitchers are updated. And then for hitters, what you want to do is you want to go back to your salaries tab and you want to grab everybody. I know you're grabbing starting pitchers, you're grabbing relievers. Those aren't hitters, but just for the purpose of this, we're grabbing everyone. And do a copy. Go back to hitters. Erase all of your hitters that you have in there. Do a paste. And you'll see all this information will start to update. Which is pretty cool to watch. Okay. It's still updating. I was getting a little worried there, but it's still coming. So give it a second. It's a large file. I've got a ton of stuff going on right now. Okay. All right, so here we go. So what you can see is we've got pitchers kind of spread out throughout this whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click up here and I'm going to sort by position. And when you do that, we'll be able to isolate the relievers and isolate the starters and delete them so that we're not bothered by them anymore. So here we go. So this is first base, second base, third base. Let's scroll down. Okay, relievers. Start right here. So let's grab them. And then just keep scrolling down as we get to starters. And right click, delete those rows. So now we are just, oh, I messed that up. That's okay, we can still do it. Sorry, go back, I'm going to put them in. There's one step we have to do before we do that. That's my bad. Sorry, my brain's like fried at this point. I'm sure yours is as well. Okay, so before we do that, what you'll notice is we pasted in more players on this salary sheet than the one that we had previously in there. So we have names of players in here, but we don't have any more information on them. So what you need to do is you need to go to the top of the list, grab this column and drag it all the way down so that we can get positions for everybody. And you'll see those populate here. Okay. And then go to the top and drag across this row and then drag down. And this will give you the rest of the information on everybody. So this might take a second here because it's a lot of information to populate. There's like 12 VLOOKUPs it's going through. My computer's slow and I have my screen share running, so this might take just a couple of extra seconds here. But all the information is coming. On your computers, without running this information and getting used to it, this will probably take 5 to 10 minutes to update every day, probably closer to 5 than 10. And it will be a really handy tool for you moving forward. You can see my making progress here. Almost done. There we go. Okay, so now that we have all of the positions identified for players, what we'll do now is sort by position. And the way we're going to do that is just go up here again, data, sort range by position. Again, we're getting the first baseman first, obviously. Okay. Scroll down, we'll remove the relievers and the starters, which they begin here. Make sure you get them all, but also be careful because the shortstops will sneak up on you pretty quickly. Yeah, there they are. So make sure you just get the starters, right click, do delete rows. So now you have just the hitters. The final step that I like to do here is to sort by value, again, like we did with the pitchers. But what you're going to do is you're going to get a lot that have errors in them. And that's expected. DraftKings is very proactive with their player pool, very much more proactive than FanDuel, meaning they have a lot of guys who are just prospects in here. Like John Singleton, like he has not, I don't think, played for the Astros yet this season, but he's in the salary pool. So he's in here, but he doesn't have a projection. There's a lot of guys like that because DraftKings is very, again, proactive with their list. So usually what I just do is I come in and highlight those guys that don't have a projection and delete them. And then now I'm left with just hitters and just people that have projections. If we do I like to finally, just for viewing purposes, sort these by position and then by value. That gives me the top values at every position, which I feel like is a pretty good place to start my research. Oops, so position, then by value. And you'll see everyone will have a value. The first baseman will come first. And like for tonight's purposes, both Mike Napoli and Carlos Santana, as you can see, are some of the top value. Sense, right? Because their pitch weight against Anibal Sanchez is so high. They've both been playing okay. They're in a not terrible ballpark, so you understand why that makes sense. Okay. That's it. That's how you update it. I hope this video was valuable to you. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. I know my brain hurts. I'm sure yours does too. Again, finally, I do sell these spreadsheets for $50. I'll just send you a copy of one and you can update it every day, although I know the practice of actually creating them can be extremely valuable. If you run into any issues, please leave me a comment below or a question below. I'll do my best to answer it. I will also do my best to make some follow-up videos like I mentioned. You're going to get some errors because players' names don't match up or maybe abbreviations don't match up. I'll do my best to answer those. That's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. The information from DFS On Demand can be found for the player, or the information for the player calendar can be found on DFS On Demand. Last little plug here, DFS On Demand has a lot of tools like this, a lot of cool spreadsheets that I try to make. Always open for discussion in terms of trying for everyone to improve playing daily fantasy. So give me a shout over there. Follow me on Twitter. It's at DFS On Demand. Best of luck. I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya. All right, we are in the home